Hello everyone, you're watching New World News Network. I'm Jamie Starr, and today we're going to get into the controversy surrounding rapper B.O.B. and Neil deGrasse Tyson. For those who don't know, rapper B.O.B. has been coming out talking about different conspiracy theories, cloning, weather modification, chemtrails, and the flat earth among these conspiracy theories. Neil deGrasse Tyson has decided to weigh in, and most of the people commenting on this are immediately going towards this is a psyop, it's just meant to make all conspiracy theorists look bad, and going for that route. As I've said in other videos, I think Flat Earth is a really interesting conspiracy to look into for a few main reasons. The USGS, the United States Geological Society, or whatever, that does surveying of the land and everything like that, they use the flat Earth map, the typical circular, all the countries surrounding each other. For people, the most common reference everyone will have to this is the UN's flag. The UN's flag is the flat Earth map, and part of the reason people suspect this is because there's a treaty with all of the nations involved in the UN where no one is allowed to the South Pole or Antarctica. So people think this is suspicious. It obviously is suspicious because General Byrd, who had flown down there on a mission before the treaty, said that the South Pole is filled with oil and minerals and all these things that science are telling us we constantly need, and there's a finite supply. And part of the reason for all of this, and this is the danger with the science cult, is that they'll come out and say something, and then politicians will take it and say, okay, well, because these guys have science backing this up, we need to now legislate and govern based off the scientific findings. And it seems that these scientists are full of shit 90% of the time, and they tend to come out with the exact opposite. I remember a video, I wish I had pulled it for this, where a astrophysicist, which all astrophysicists are full of shit. They are sci-fi writers who put fuzzy math to their ideas and then try to think it's true. Well, this guy was talking about CERN, and when they fired it up, and the video was so funny because he's so excited leading up to it. He's like, this will be great, we'll find out if our theories are correct and everything. And then you see him the day afterwards, and they're like, so what'd you find out? And he goes, I guess seeing the glass half full, we found out we know nothing. None of our theories are right. There's so much left to explore. And this is the problem, is that they are funding these fucking quacks and giving them millions and millions of dollars to come up with nothing. Nothing that benefits society, nothing that benefits anyone. And if you really look at it, that you realize lots of things that we think are real based off of Hollywood and educational textbooks are not. Black holes have never been proven. They're completely theoretical. Gravity. Gravity is another thing where, yes, we all know things fall and hit the ground, but you can't measure gravity. You can't detect it. X-rays, at least, we can measure and detect. Radio waves we can at least measure and detect and pick up on. Gravity, there's no evidence for besides things falling and hitting the ground, which, I mean, other people have chalked that up to electromagnetics, and also there's tons of other theories about these, but instead the system takes a theory and presents it continually as fact. Darwinism is another example of this. And in this video, I'm going to get to some things that show you that Darwinism obviously is not the right answer. And it's so funny because what Darwinists do is they take sets of bones they find and then they put cute fairy tale stories to it. When the bones cannot prove to you that anyone had any offspring. So to go to a set of bones and say, oh, well, we all came from this one here, Lucy, there's no proof of that. But we do have bones that back up the Bible stories, and science doesn't want to acknowledge that, and it's created controversy known as Smithsonian Gate, where there are tons of things that get discovered that just end up going down the memory hole because it doesn't fit into these scientific models. So, we'll start here with how Neil deGrasse Tyson is a professional moron, and there's plenty to get into. So here we have it with time, and this is still going on between these two. Now, it says, you can add Flat Earth alongside chemtrails to the ever-growing list of hilarious celebrity hoaxes. B.O.B. has been off the singles chart for a while, but recently launched back into fame with his string of tweets calling the Flat Earth. Alright, first off, because they're just going to throw it right out there and try to say, oh, well, chemtrails aren't real. So, let's look into this a bit. Well, here's a list of patents. Let's see if we can get our zoom right. Going back to 1891, over 100 years ago, they had a method of producing rainfall. 1913, rainmaking. 1915, protection of poisonous gas. And these are all geoengineering. I mean, look at this. Airplane spray equipment, 1934. These are all smoke-producing mixture, smoke screen generator, 1945, aerial discharge device, process for controlling weather, 1951. I mean, this, like, to say that this stuff is a conspiracy and it doesn't exist, well, I mean, these people are the obvious science deniers, because you're denying over 100 years worth of science and patents. Aerial insecticide dusting device. I mean, and that's the thing. We know they do crop dusting, so why don't you think they're doing other? Cloud seeding carbon dioxide bullet. Silver iodide cloud seeding generator. Generation of ice nucleating crystals, so they can just spray some shit in the environment and create ice. I mean, this is the stuff, cloud seeding apparatus, rainmaker, going on. We're still only in the 70s. Let's see, weather modification methods. So it obviously not only has it been developed, but they keep developing it. Air pollution control method, cloud seeding system, weather modification process. Rockets having barium release system to create ion clouds in upper atmosphere. Well, that's what the people saying they're chemtrails are claiming. So these crazy people for saying that people are using the inventions that were from the 70s. I mean, that's so nuts, I guess. Let's see. Combustible compositions for generating aerosols, particularly suitable for cloud modification and weather control and aerosolization process. Now, here's one that I've had a hunch about, and I should look into this more. Method of controlling and or improving high latitude or other communications or radio wave surveillance systems by particle control of radio waves. And I've thought this for a while, that the reason they're putting these heavy metals into the atmosphere is to harness it as a giant Wi-Fi network. That basically they can transmit data across these particles and everything, and the average it's sort of like radio waves, where it's being used as a conductor. So 1977, I guess they were able to do that. So, you know, methamphetamines, 84, bipolar fog, abate system, liquid propane generator for cloud seeding apparatus. It goes on and on. Method of suppressing formation of contrails and solution, therefore. Method of producing a shell of revitalistic particles in an altitude above Earth's surface. Cloud seeding. Method of cloud seeding. Oh. Solar-powered airplane, 2000. I wonder why they don't use them. You know, instead they keep pushing the fossil fuel myth, which we will also get into that. RFID environmental manipulation. Charged seed cloud as method for increasing particle collisions and for scavenging airborne biological agents and other contaminants. Geoengineering method of businessing use carbon counterbalance credits. Ground-based manipulation and control of aerial vehicle during non-flying operations. So, I mean, you can see that Chemtrails? Oh, it's a laughable hysteria. I mean, the person who wrote that article is what's laughable. Beyond that, you have all these other articles. Chemtrails confirm climate scientists admits they are dumping aerosols. This is a video from a CERN presentation that make it clear that geoengineers and government agencies are fully aware that jet aircraft are dumping aerosols. Kirby says, these are clouds seeded by jets dumping aerosols into the upper atmosphere. So you have this going on. Government's note there. Here's a video. Is it going to play? Alright, well, let's go to the next one. NASA scientist admits chemtrails. It's been done in the 1970s, it's been done in the 1990s, and the 2000s, and continued. The lithium release in the daytime hasn't been done since the 1970s. Okay, so, lithium was only dispersed during the nighttime? Interesting. So, I mean, you have all these scientists talk about it. The fact that the mainstream news just won't admit it is fucking ridiculous. Here we have a InfoWars article where the AP reported in 2009 that they were talking about the possibility of putting these aerosols into the environment to fight climate change, man-made climate change, which is another one of these fucking ridiculous science ideas that they're put out. And then, next thing you know, NASA comes out with this. Climate change shock. Burning fossil fuels cools the planet. So, you know, global warming, that went on. Then we found out it wasn't global warming, it's climate change, which the climate change it happens. The climate does change. We've had ice ages before and everything else. Well, now they're saying that all these fossil fuels that they're saying we need to be monitored and taxed for, and the carbon dioxide, which the plants need, that fossil fuels actually cool down the planet. And speaking of fossil fuels, where's it? Oh, Neil deGrasse Tyson on his Twitter, I found this. Crude oil is just as natural gas. They both derive from buried, long dead, decomposed plants and animals. Well, no they don't. And that's because we're finding them on different planets that have no dead animals turning to fossils and everything like that. They're finding it, and they're finding out that it comes from a hydrogen reaction, and that basically it's the lifeblood of our planet, and will just keep being produced. As you can see, oil's been found on Titan, one of Saturn or Jupiter's moons. So this, you know, again, Neil deGrasse Tyson obviously knows nothing about that. And then I even found this article where scientists, a British firm, has been able to make petrol from the air just by a reaction between the oxygen and water and an electrolyzing it basically in some sort of way that is producing pure carbon dioxide, and then they're able to somehow change that into petrol. It says alternatively it can be blended directly with gasoline, diesel, and aviation fuel. So there isn't a fossil fuel depleting crisis. So you know that should and the whole problem is we're based on the petrodollar. So it's a way to manipulate currencies and prices against supply and demand rather than just letting it be a natural thing. So let's see. Here's the reason why Neil deGrasse Tyson has been brought into this. Oh, I know why this isn't showing up. Hold on 1 second. Or actually, let me just unplug this. Yeah.
Sea level at the equator is farther away from the center of the Earth than sea level near the poles. It has nothing to do with global warming and melting of the ice caps.
Why is that?
Because Earth, we know it spins. Once, day. Yes, thank you. 3 people know how long a day lasts here.
Good for row number 2. They're off to a great start.
So you spin, when you spin pizza dough, it kind of flattens out.
Yeah.
It gets wider in the middle. So Earth, throughout its life, even when it formed, it was spinning. And it got a little wider at the equator than it does at the poles. So it's not actually a sphere. It's oblate. And a fish is an oblate spheroid.
So, Neil deGrasse Tyson has come out and said the Earth is shaped like a pear, basically, when these are the photos that NASA has given us saying that this is what the Earth looks like. So this is the reason why Neil deGrasse Tyson is getting so defensive over this, and he won't answer the simple question of, well, if the Earth is shaped like a pear, why does NASA show a perfect circle?
But not only that, it's slightly wider below the equator than above the equator.
A little chubbier.
A little chubbier.
Yeah.
Chubby's a good way. It's like pear-shaped.
Yeah.
So, it turns out the pear-shapedness is bigger than the height of Mount Everest above sea level.
So, someone's full of shit, and rather than addressing that, Neil is addressing little bits of B.O.B.'s argument about curvature and length, and I recommend anyone who's really interested watch some of the flat earth videos, because there's so much that they've done to show that certain lengths of distance go on and there is no curve. So it's very, very interesting. But this isn't the first time Neil deGrasse has been full of shit. We have this list. This one is the one thing Neil deGrasse had gotten wrong. And this basically is going on about philosophy. Socrates, Nietzsche. Here he says, Tyson and others like him readily admit that the philosopher used to be the person of knowledge, but insist that the true person of knowledge is now unequivocally identified with the scientist. Whatever the merits of this switcheroo, it's worth knowing the difference between philosophizing of Socrates and his Socratism. The former is the latter, as the virtues of science are to scientism. The virtues of science include such things as the aforementioned discrimination between appearance and reality, as well as the expansion of our awareness of the phenomena of world, both of which necessary. So think of it this way. Philosophizing is all about properly framing the problems we want to solve and then asking rigorous questions about them, looking at them from as many different angles as possible, leaving no stone unturned in this process, whereas Socratism is more like dogma, when all of those once fluid philosophical values ironically congeal into a closed-mind credo. Scientism is basically an inordained belief in the ability of the methods of science to definitively describe all of reality, and also that any questions that can't be answered by science simply aren't worth asking. And that's the whole thing, where these scientists come up with a theory, and then when they find a proof of their theory, it then becomes their truth. Like I mentioned, I would go into some of this stuff. This stuff are skeletons of giants, which have been found all over the world. And part of the reason why they won't talk about this stuff and admit this stuff is because it debunks so many of the fairy tales that we are taught. The fairy tale that everything originated from ancient Egypt, the fairy tale of Darwinism, the fairy tale that we came from monkeys, because the Bible clearly says that fallen angels came down and mated with the daughters of men, and they created hybrids, and that's part of what led to the flood, is you had these giants walking around. David and Goliath and you see the size of these people, and people wonder why the doorways in places of these ancient temples are huge, and it's because you needed them for someone like this to walk through. So, I mean, look at the size of that head in comparison to the whole person uncovering it. And these all end up ignored by archaeology and science because it doesn't fit with Darwinism and will throw Darwinism on its head. Here we have a National Geographic article that Turkey has even come out and said that they are 99.9% sure that they have found Noah's Ark, and it has been grown over into a mountain of Mount Ararat. And here you have some people discussing it saying, oh, well, it's way too young because of carbon dating. And that's the other thing. Carbon dating, you know, they've carbon dated things that are still alive, and it will say it's 15,000 years old and shit. Carbon dating is not a very accurate or consistent way of placing things into timelines. Also, with archaeology, the way they have things separated with the geographic columns. The columns are based on the fossils, and the fossils are based on the columns. So these people are going around saying, oh, well, I found this trilobite or whatever in the ground, and, you know, this must be this many years old because the dates in the columns tell me that. Like, it's such circular logic that most of these people don't get it. Now, I'll tell you, I was engaged to a geologist for a point in time, and she was at least aware that climate change was a bunch of bull and everything like that. So on some ends, your geologists and your archaeologists are very smart and very educated, but in other areas, they're just as full of shit as everyone else, and it's because of these compartmentalized educations that we're giving to people. So that's, you know, reality and fact, debunking some of the science nonsense, and, you know, not the Bible, or, showing the Bible to be true. Here's a video of my favorites over on the Young Turks, going off.
The science show, Neil deGrasse Tyson has a pretty unique ability to inspire wonder in the young, to get them interested in science, perhaps to go into scientific careers. And so, of course, he must be destroyed. And Fox is taking that up as their mission. One of their guests on the extremely popular Red Eye program decided to levy an attack at Neil deGrasse Tyson. Let's watch.
I hate this guy.
Okay.
I remember hearing Chris Hardwick on a podcast talk about Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he was just salivating. White liberal nerds love this guy so much, he could defecate on them like Martin Bashir's fantasies, and they would dance in the streets.
Yeah, so...
now, here's the funny thing. This guy goes on, you can see the title. He deems Gavin McInnes a racist, and the only race Gavin McInnes insulted are white liberal nerds, this guy, and saying that he loves Neil deGrasse Tyson so much that he would just let him defecate all over him.
deGrasse Tyson, he has never offered to defecate on me. I guess I'll have to cross that bridge when I get to it. But anyway, like, by the way, the guy that you saw there, who's been on Fox many times, I believe 18 times.
This is the worst part of this entire story, is that this guy gets on their air all the time. He's
all the time.
Virulent racist.
Yeah, former co-founder of Vice. He hasn't worked there in 6 years, I believe now.
Since 2008?
Since 2008, yes. And so we have a bunch of other past comments of his, but specifically to attack Neil deGrasse Tyson, who I find to be one of the least offensive human beings in the world. It's like when people attack Ellen.
But he's an idiot, and he's wrong the majority of the time. Or he's talking about things that you can't even prove him wrong on, because it's just fuzzy math based off of other things. Like, one of the funniest things that these astrophysicists have come up with is the idea of transpermia, which is basically Prometheus. They are so desperate to disprove the idea of God and a creator that they have sort of merged the Big Bang, which is a fairy tale, with this idea that alien life has come here and then created us and everything. So instead of just saying God created us, they're creating a whole race of space aliens and everything like that. And then you end up, because of the Egypt fairy tale, you end up with people who believe in that fairy tale getting mad that now they're saying, oh, well, the pyramids must have been built by aliens because of whatever. And it's just such a mess. And again, the reason why I would opt towards a flat earther as opposed to any of these other people is because the flat earthers are the ones saying, believe what you see with your eyes. Look around you, what you see with your eyes, and go with that. Go with your gut. Because when you look at some of the other things, let me see if I can pull this video up real quick. Since we're touching on the flat Earth, science cult Cavendish. YouTube. I believe this is it.
By professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. And the answer to 1984 is 33 AD. Approximately. I originally found this clip from John LeBon. I'll put a link to his channel at the end of this video. I'll also link to the Morgile as well. Both of those guys are worth subscribing to. So before I show you the clip, if you type in Cavendish experiment, the first video that shows up is this one. It's come from the University of Nottingham, so the man there will be a physicist, a lecturer, and he's explaining how the Cavendish experiment works. You'll see a beautiful looking German student like this one here. It's in German if we click on it, explaining how to weigh the mass of the Earth by using the Cavendish principle. It's even taught in the Chinese education system, and you'll find hundreds of videos and demonstrations from universities including Harvard and all the top ones from around the world recreating this experiment. So, in a nutshell, you suspend 2 lead balls from the
Let me just quote Thomas Sowell, "You have to be educated to be this stupid."
ceiling, and depending on which direction they spin, you can measure the gravity, and from that, you can find out the mass of the Earth. You can also weigh the mass of the moon, the sun, and all the stars from this device. It has 99% accuracy, and they've only improved on it a tiny bit in the last 200 years. Today, there's less than a 1% inaccuracy in this method of weighing the mass of a planet. It's phenomenal.
Because we pop these planets onto scales and double check it against the planet sitting on the scale.
So now you know how the Cavendish experiment works. Let's watch this moving testimony from a man who left a cult. His testimony is amazing, and it's a must-see. In the following clip, a man named Resistus explains how he left behind a religious cult after discovering that it was all based on one big lie. You guys can believe any religion you want. Now, this religion I left, their followers are shamed if they question the clergy. This cult indoctrinates the children from a very young age. By the time they become adults, they don't even realize it's a cult because beliefs were drilled into their brain. But one day I questioned the clergy about where their truths come from. They said, "Resist us, we have rituals to give us the truth." I discovered their most important ritual, one they rarely speak of. It involves hanging 2 heavy balls from a shed roof. I questioned them about this. They said, "Resist us, you haven't studied our religious books enough to know, so go away." But I questioned them anyway. You'll see why. With this ritual, the clergy claim that they can weigh the entire Earth. Weigh the entire Earth with this ritual.
Estaba la paellera agarrada metida entre las piedras de Chipiona, del faro. Y cuando entro en el restaurante me ve el cocinero con una paellera y adentro la vende paellera. ¡Asómate, mira dónde llega el agua!
And here's the thing, is gravity is one of these things too that has been incorporated into all the other beliefs about science and, you know, the planets and the forming and how this whole solar system sticks together and nothing flies off track and everything like that. So it's all founded and weaved into that one, where the moment someone disproves gravity, all this other science is just going to fall apart because it's all based on someone else's bunk theory.
Llegaba el agua hasta el restaurante. Había subido la marea. Jesús, hay que hacer ahora con los dos sacos de arroz. ¡Ay, llama para Sevilla! ¡Llama a Sevilla que traigo paella! ¡Ay, Jesús, yo con el bañador y con la paella! ¡Ay, el cocinero! No vea, para Sevilla. Y al último, que cuando ya salió la bien de regla, estamos llorando. Me cobró el tío la paella. Me cobró a 500 veces la paella. Y ya no fui más. Me fui andando a coger los amarillos hasta hoy. Me mandó por la noche, había bajado más el agua y por la mañana había subido. Cualquiera estaba bonita la paellera, ¿sabes? A lo mejor está en el barco ese del petróleo.
En el Prestige.
En el Prestige ese. Y ya no otra vez más la cocina. Ya aborrecí la cocina. Ay, ay, ay. Pues no cobré nada, me dieron el dinero del bote.
¿Había mucho dinero en el bote?
Lo que me echaban y el dinero de lo que gané, me cobraron 20 paelleras. A 500 caras, pues viste lo que me llevé yo para Sevilla. Ay, ya aborrecí la playa. Ay, hemos llorado los dos.
So there you see, even this guy, you know, Ken Hovind, who makes great videos debunking Darwinism and all that, he said all the time, Darwinism is a religion. Even this, the idea that the Earth is round and it's a religion. It's not based on anything. You know, there's such leaps of faith involved in it that when you really look into it, you know, this man was a scientist and he realized it was all bullshit once you start looking at it logically. So, here are some other things Neil deGrasse Tyson got wrong. He said GMOs were good for you. Why Neil deGrasse Tyson is dead wrong about GMOs. Neil deGrasse Tyson, and this is the thing, is he is such a fucking tool. He comes out and basically says, like, splicing plants and doing it in a old school crossbreeding type manner is genetically modified plants. And basically, I mean, if this is the way he's thinking, then when I meet a pretty girl and, you know, I have brown hair, she has blonde hair, and we fucking have a kid, and the kid has red hair, that we've made a genetically modified child. Like, that's basically what he's saying. Practically every food you buy in a store for consumption by humans is genetically modified. There are no wild seedless watermelons. There are no wild cows. You list all fruit and vegetables and you ask yourself if there's a wild counterpart to this. If there is, it's not as large, it's not as sweet, it's not as juicy. We have systematically genetically modified all the foods, the vegetables, and animals that we have eaten ever since we've cultivated them. It's called artificial selection. And that's how we genetically modify them. Oh, there's a big difference between artificial selection and going in and fucking splicing insect DNA into a piece of corn. Like, he is comparing apples and oranges and trying to say, well, so chill out. We've been doing it for tens of thousands of years, so chill out. I mean, this guy is such a tool. I hope he eats all this GMO food and ends up sterile and his body ridden with cancers. Because that's what happens to the mice that eat it. The mice develop cancer and tumors. And it says right here, the genetic modification Tyson is discussing is plant breeding and hybridization. And yes, that dates back thousands of years. But it's not what's going on as far as GMOs. Here it says, transgenesis specifically is the introduction of foreign genetic material into a living organism. Monsanto has often achieved it by ballistic DNA injections or gene gun, which blasts off genetic material into undifferentiated plant cells into a petri dish. This destroys most of the cells, but usually leaves some that have successfully merged. So, and then you also have them talk about the Roundup Ready corn and everything, which is, I mean, they're talking about corn and foods that will produce vaccines, goats that have been engineered to produce spider milk. There's all sorts of stuff. I mean, MIT or one of them came out with an article a few weeks ago about humanized hybrids being born in fucking cows and shit. Like, this is mad scientist stuff going on. And this tool is trying to say, oh, don't worry about it, what the scientists are doing. We've been doing this for tens of thousands of years. Like, this is exactly why Gavin McGines comes out and says, I hate him. Because he is such a tool. B.O.B. actually released a diss track to him and even says, I wonder how much they're paying you. Because he just comes out and says really stupid things. I mean, besides the fact that every time there's a space movie coming out, he'll be like, things I found wrong with gravity. The things I found wrong with The Martian. And it's all based on his crackpot math and theories. It's not like he's been to Mars or outer space or any of this. He's just saying, well, in my Candyland world, where my mathematical equations I've come up with are the foundations of reality, the movie doesn't coincide with it. And it's like, of course, you idiot, it's a movie. This is the problem with society. People are getting their counterpoints for reality against movies, where people believe, the roles they see African Americans in historical movies are the only roles there were. I actually saw a good clip from Fox News, who everyone will claim is inherently racist, where they were showing that there wouldn't have been an American independence without black people, and not slaves as far as blacks, but black soldiers and stuff. There's so much more history out there than people even think about. I mean, I was thinking to look into it. I guarantee you, people talk about, oh, The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise and this, that. There probably were white samurais. There probably were black samurais. There were a hell of a lot of black cowboys. And people don't know this stuff, and they don't look into it, and they don't realize that reality is a lot more different and a lot more diverse than your textbooks and the media would want you to believe, because they want you to be pigeonholed in a certain type of mindset. So 5 things Cosmos gets wrong. Let's just speed through this. Venus was not caused by global warming. And here, this is the crazy thing. They're saying Venus, that Tyson says we should question everything, except him, of course. But Venus is the way it is due to greenhouse gas and global warming and everything like that. And the person just says, well, if that's what you're saying, then were there cars there? Like, what caused it outside of, basically global warming's been disproved, so you can't even make that claim. The multiverse is not science. Well, I suppose it's a theory. It's not factual. You can't, unless someone has been to another universe or reality, you can't really test it. There is no sound in space. This, I don't know. I think, technically we're in space, and there is sound here, so I guess it defines what you're saying as space. And then here it's just about ranking who they feel is the more important scientist. So, I mean, there's obviously lots of things that people debate Neil deGrasse Tyson on. Here's another video I found where they were talking
I know I just did a video about an HBO
about Scientology, which believes in the transpermia theory and cults, and the whole thing is these people who worship science and everything will go around saying Christianity is a cult, religion's a cult, this is a cult, and they fail to see that they are in a cult and that they do the exact same things cult members do. They just do it in such a way that they don't even realize it. Like, this woman will talk about cutting off people and pushing them out of your life and everything. And I mean, B.O.B. came out and said, hey, people should look at the evidence, the earth is flat, this, and that. And immediately people try writing him off and saying, oh, B.O.B. is at it again, he's crazy, arm's length. And that's what they do, is if you come out with anything that is outside of their cult mindset, you're then pushed towards the edges. Says Stacey Dash. She has been writing great articles about how you see this in social engineering with her remarks about BET and everything, where, if you come out saying something with conservative values, you're automatically denounced as being an Uncle Tom, Uncle Ruckus, you're not really black, this, and that. And it's the same thing. It's the cult mindset saying, I can't allow anyone else to influence me that does not share my beliefs. And most of the people that say it are the ones that say, oh, we need diversity. And they only want diversity in appearance. They want shallow, superficial diversity rather than embracing people who think differently than them. Because thinking differently won't jive with keeping everything orderly. They want uniform order. That's one of the big things that I thought that the South Park season pointed out, is political correctness coincides with corporate gains, because that way they can better market to everyone, because they know these people are given this. And I mean, that's like BET is the perfect example of a corporation and a corporate entity niche marketing towards black people and selling them stuff, selling them a lifestyle, selling them products, and Stacey Dash speaks out against it the same way Morgan Freeman did, and she is chastised and ridiculed, and no one has the balls to come at Morgan Freeman over it. That's one of the things I mentioned in my video about Stacey Dash, is you have these people picking on her. You have Macklemore picking on Miley Cyrus and Iggy Azalea, and everyone, even though we're in a culture that is supposed to celebrate strong, empowered, hard-headed women who will speak their mind and be independent and strong, the moment a actual strong, independent, smart, critical thinking woman comes out, we say, that bitch is crazy. And they start making fucking ridiculous memes about her and everything else. So let's let this lady talk.
Documentary that I love, but it's already time for another one, because last week HBO premiered Going Clear, the documentary based on the book of the same name that's all about the seedier aspects of Scientology. And let's be honest, when it comes to Scientology, all of the aspects are pretty seedy. The documentary covers many of the facts that a lot of skeptics probably already know. Things about how Scientologists will harass and libel critics, how they convince people to disconnect from their friends and family, how they abuse poorly paid and unpaid workers. But even if you already know all of this stuff, it's still worth watching the film because the details are truly damning. It includes interviews from a lot of ex-Scientologists who talk very candidly about what they personally saw and what they went through. And I think it's just really great for us to remember how awful Scientology really is. I know that I personally haven't really thought about Scientology in a long time. And so I think that this is a really great time to renew people's interest in the cult and maybe convince them to stop buying tickets to Tom Cruise films, or even call for the IRS to remove Scientology's tax-exempt status.
Now, I think you have to recognize American values. I think calling for removal of their tax-exempt status, then you should call for it across the board. Or, I mean, I think that at this point, this video would be a lot better if instead of saying Scientology, she was just saying science, because it's completely applicable both ways. But, because a religion encourages people to disconnect with others that don't share that belief, I mean, there's certain sects of Christianity that would, encourage, they encourage people to save one another, but they're also encouraging of people to not surround themselves with sinful people. I believe the same would be said about Judaism and, Muslims. People stick within their own groups and don't want, if they're a true believer, tend to not want negative influence. So that same remark, if you were to go after these guys, where do you draw the line? So, bad idea.
And because I think all of those things, I am now going to disagree publicly with Neil deGrasse Tyson for possibly the first time ever, even including the Pluto stuff.
Because she is another liberal who wants him to defecate on her.
When someone asked Tyson about Scientologists' weird beliefs, he pointed out that they're no weirder than any Christian's belief, and that the only difference between a religion and a cult is how much time has passed. I understand why he said those things. After all, I've said those things in the past too. Those things come from Annoying Atheist 101, that time in your life when you just really want to point out how weird everyone's beliefs are, and how hypocritical it is for some Christians, for instance, to mock other religions' beliefs.
Or people who believe they can weigh the earth from a fucking ball hanging from a shed. I mean, and that's the thing. You really don't see too many people criticizing these nut jobs, but they should. They should.
And I think that that's valid. After all, the Scientologists' belief that an alien came and put a bunch of souls in volcanoes and then blew them up with atomic bombs is equally as likely and believable as a god impregnating a virgin so she'll have a baby who will grow up and be murdered and go back to heaven.
Notice how she says Scientology's creation story, and then doesn't say Christianity's creation story, but says the story of the birth of Jesus. And there have been other immaculate conceptions documented even in modern times. So, you can't really go and immediately go for that. But here's the common sense way of looking at it. I'm an artist. I'm a musician. I create songs. Melodies come to me in my head, and then through interfacing with the computer now and using tools like my keyboard, I make my ideas come to fruition. They come to life. I am creating something, and by the end of it, my intangible idea is on a solid CD. So I am taking my visions and my ideas and making them manifest in a tangible reality, and so I am a creator. And people do this. They invent things, they create things, and everything like that. And it is a ability that humans have that set us so far above animals and the ideas in Darwinism that it completely Darwinism is a religion that basically says, let's ignore everything that makes humans magical or godlike, lowercase g. And it just completely wipes all of that away. When the reason people believe that we have a creator is because we are creators. And the Bible says, made in the image of God, made in the likeness of God. So in some ways, when we are artists and creators ourselves, we are being like God. It makes sense. It's just a pattern that we see. So, and this is what I mentioned earlier, where for them to debunk the story of there being a god or a creator, they instead come up with a whole race of aliens and everything else.
To forgive humanity for acting the way God made them. But it's simply not true that Christianity and Scientology are equal on the scale of what is and is not a cult. Yes, maybe time does have something to do with it, but not so much in the way that we tend to revere things that we think are older, but in the way that religions tend to mellow out after a millennia or two. Scientology today, as it is practiced, is much more ridiculous than Christianity and much more dangerous. And I'm speaking about broad mainstream Christianity, the kind that I grew up with as a Baptist. I know that growing up as a Baptist, for instance, I knew more or less what we believed, we as Baptists. Scientologists don't know what they believe. They are not allowed to know what they believe until they have invested many years of their life and all of the money they have to find out the secret of Xenu. That's pretty culty. Cults like Scientology are also set apart from other religions by the fact that they force their members to disconnect from people who don't share the faith or who are seen as in some way oppressive. Again, I can speak
like B.O.B. and people who want to debate whether or not the Earth is flat. A lot of people don't know the reason NASA put out the picture of the Earth is because this argument keeps coming back. It's not what they have you believe in the textbooks, where Columbus, they thought the Earth was flat, so he was going to try to sail off the edge and everything like that, and then it was put to rest. This debate keeps coming back up because they can't find proof that the Earth is round. And if you really look into NASA, you find out the whole thing's been run by Nazis from the start. And then, it's people distrust the Nazis. I mean, we recently found out from the FBI that Hitler died an old man, alive and well. So when you start to see so many things that you found out weren't what you were told, regardless of whether you know the truth or not, you know what you're being told is a lie, you kind of start to doubt everything. I mean, and I think it's a bad habit to doubt everything, but you should at least be open to both ends of it and really be able to prioritize what this information does to your life and your quality of life and how you view things. And one of the things that has been said, I'm done with this, about the flat Earth thing is the idea of the enclosed dome, where people will not like the idea because they'll basically feel as if they are trapped within the bounds of the dome and everything. So that's my video on Neil deGrasse Tyson's nonsense. Let me see. I don't believe I went into this one. Oh yes, here's the thing yesterday. Boom! Watch Neil deGrasse Tyson drop mic on B.O.B's Flat Earth, and this is because B.O.B. did the diss track, and then Tyson came up and said, whatever he had to say about it. There's a growing anti-intellectual strain in this country that may be the beginning of the end of our informed democracy. No, and here's the thing is these people are informed, and they're informed how full of shit you are. And they're also informed, them being informed puts his multi-million-dollar paychecks at risk. And that's what he's really doing all this for, is because he doesn't want it to be exposed how full of shit he is. Notice this was on Comedy Central, and this is the other problem with people on the left. I was one of these people when I was on the left. I got all of my views about conservatives from comedians, from Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert, who are very entertaining, but you should not get your opinion of people from comedians. You should actually listen to people and their side of the argument. And that's one of the things I noticed, and you can even see it with Stacey Dash and everything she's been saying. I don't know anyone who was conservative and decided that being liberal was a better ideology, except if it was a child who was maybe born and raised conservative and switched to being a liberal out of rebellion or something. Everyone I know started liberal. They were either conservative, born and raised conservative, and stay conservative because they know all of this shit is stupid, or they were like me, born and raised liberal, thought liberally, and then realized how full of shit liberals are and have turned more conservative. People only go from liberal to conservative. They don't go the other way because it's a step backwards. And it's basically taking personal responsibility and saying, here, I give it all to all of you. I'm not going to think for myself. I'll appoint Neil deGrasse Tyson the high priest of everything astronomy-wise. I'm, not going to want to, save up for my retirement, delegated to government Social Security. It's a abdicating of all responsibility to somewhere else. That's liberalism. That's their idea of free, putting the authorities and the intellectuals and the government in charge of everything because the experts know best about everything. And it's completely wrong. The Earth is not shaped like a pear. I don't know if it's round or if it's flat, but either Neil deGrasse Tyson or NASA is full of shit. One of the two. That's what we get out of this. That it could be that neither are right. But people really should stop worshiping these fucking quack-ass scientists who don't know shit about shit and they're professional con men. They're good with math, sci-fi writers, and that's the thing. Neil deGrasse Tyson, he should just write movies. Who knows? Maybe he could write the next Star Wars, and maybe it could be factually correct as per his imagination. But whatever. So, B.O.B. versus Neil deGrasse Tyson. If I could put the diss track in here without copyright infringement, B.O.B. is definitely winning. It's New World News. I hope everyone enjoyed.